Okay, welcome back. Let's go ahead and get started. So we need to get to the dashboard of our SDDC manager. So we'll go ahead and click Google Chrome. And that brings us to the login screen. You can see the account we're logging in under and the vsphere.local, which is the local domain. I'll go ahead and hit the login button. It looks like a lot like logging into the vSphere client, which we're going to take a look at in a moment. Now, this is our dashboard, and you can see from the dashboard here that we have a big overall view. It's our home page that provides the overall administrative view of the system. The dashboard page has a top-level view of the physical and logical resources across all of the physical racks in our system, including available CPU, memory, storage capacity. You can see that right here, right? Top level view of things. It shows us the two domains right here, the SDDC management domain and the workload 01 domain, recent tasks, solutions, etc. We can see down here some tasks that had occurred. We can see a navigator down the side here. We can see we can create workload domains right from here. We can add hosts into our domain, etc. So a lot you can do with this. Now, let's go ahead and move forward. So one of the things I want to do is show you that at the same time we can also log into the vSphere client. So I'm going to go ahead and click on that. And because we've already logged into the SDDC manager, it's provided the credentials, we can use the same credentials here. And so I'll just hit the refresh, and you can see now what we would expect to see, which is essentially the vSphere client, and we can see that we have that SDDC domain, or the cluster for that domain right here. So here's our SDDC cluster 1, and here's the WLD01 cluster that we saw on the previous page. Let's go ahead and go back to the SDDC manager. We'll go ahead and click on that, return there. And then this dashboard view, it's, let's minimize the task pane here, and that'll give us a better view of this dashboard. Now, on the left-hand navigation pane, under the inventory menu, you can see that we've highlighted the workload domains. And so what we want to do is get more detail about our workload domains. So we'll go ahead and click on that link there. And you can see now that we've expanded that. In the workload domains view, we can see the available CPU, memory, and storage for each of the domains. And so if you look across here, here's our total. And then per domain information, so CPU usage, memory usage, vSAN storage. We can see that the configuration status is active. We see that NFS storage usage, there isn't any, so it doesn't look like it's using NFS storage. We can see that it also doesn't look like it's using any VMFS on Fiber channel for storage. And what we do see here, though, is that the SDDC management domain is using vSAN storage. If we look at this first workload domain, we can see that that's actually using NFS storage. So it's super handy. You can see all this kind of information here. Let's go ahead and click over here. And we can get additional information. So we can see owner information. We can see the number of clusters. And this is part I think is particularly interesting because we can see the actual number of hosts that make up that cluster. So we can see that the management domain has 4 hosts and the workload domain has 3 hosts. In practice, you'd probably see the ratio flipped, and you'd have more hosts for your workload domains, that's your production, and then fewer hosts in the management. I mean, probably still have at least 4, right? Let's go ahead and scroll back. So we'll go ahead and click over here. And then what we want to do is drill into that management domain. So we'll click on that one. Let's take a management domain deep dive here. So from the landing page of this SDDC management workload domain, we get that immediate picture of the status of its CPU, the memory, storage consumption. You can see it's consuming quite a bit of the resources, so it looks like an efficient use of those servers. We're also able to determine the capacity of our allocated resource, as well as how much of the capacity has been consumed. Actually, I kind of said that already. Let's go ahead and click or scroll down here and get a little bit more information. Now, on this tab, this summary tab that we're currently on, and you can see that right there, we have the network and storage information, so we can see the network information here. Something I mentioned earlier, we can see that the storage is actually using a vSAN cluster. And if we were using other storage types, you'd see that across here. Let's go ahead and click on Services. Now, Services is going to display the fully qualified domain names and IP addresses of any associated components that were deployed that support a specific workload domain. So in this case, we've got a vCenter and NSX manager, and you can see those right here. Let's click on the updates and patches. Now this is going to show the pre-check workflow and any other updates that have been made available that apply to the workload domain. Also listed are the specific versions of the software for the deployed components, and we can select a version number, and it would actually take us to the update history for that component. Here you can see the pre-check button right here. So currently there's no recent pre-check status available. So let's go ahead and click on the update history. Now this will show all updates that have already been applied. We can see there haven't been any, and there's no previous updates displayed in here. And we can actually filter this by some kind of time period. So if you saw quite a few updates, and you probably would over time, right? We could actually set it to show, updates in a particular month, etc. Let's go ahead and click on the host here. This displays all of the hosts that are part of this specific workload domain. So remember, we're looking at the management domain, right? And so we can see that we have a set of hosts down here, and the cluster that they're a member of, the SDDC cluster, CPU usage, and you can see it varies across the different servers. We can also see these are all flash, which makes sense since it is a vSAN cluster. We're going to expect to see flash. So that'll be internal flash storage that has been configured as a virtual SAN. Let's go ahead and click on the clusters node here. And this would list all available clusters under the given workload domain. Again, we've been looking at an SDDC domain. And here we can see cluster 1. We saw that earlier in the vSphere client. And you can see the total CPU usage, etc., for the cluster itself. Finally, we click on the Security tab. And in the Security tab, we're going to see the certificate information for all of the components that are part of our VMware Cloud Foundation environment. So this goes beyond just the SDDC cluster. This is for the whole of Foundation. But of course, it's through the SDDC cluster that these certificates are maintained. And this can automate the replacement of our certificates for all the components inside of that VMware Cloud Foundation. So if you could think about how many different components could be part of our total SDDC environment that's spanning from both on-premise private cloud into the public cloud, this is going to be very helpful, right? We're going to go ahead and go back to our workload domain. So we'll go ahead and click on this to go back. And you can see we had a little flash saying, hey, you're going to run out of time, so beware. We actually have about an hour, so don't worry about that. And then what I want to do is click on the WLD01 domain and have a look at that. And this was built using NFS as our principal storage. And you can see right there. So this allows us to use the variety of storage that we need for the different kinds of clusters. And the summary tab actually shows the NFS as the storage type, as I've already said. Sorry, I'm kind of reading along on the instructions here. And you may have noticed that the VMFS on Fiber Channel, we can see that right over here. This is actually something that's somewhat new to Cloud Foundation and now actually supports Fiber Channel storage as a principal storage type. So we now have both vSAN, or we now have vSAN, NFS, VMFS on FC, and there's vVolume. Let's go ahead and click on the Services tab. As you can see, it's highlighting that here. And within the Services tab, we can see it uses NSXT for both management and workload domains. So we have this NSXT cluster. That basically takes us all through the big overview of the both the SDDC Manager Web Interface that we've been examining, as well as the drilling down into our workload domains, both for the management and for workloads themselves, production workloads. We're going to go ahead and wrap up this video, and then when we come back, we'll take a look at the next module in this series.